Good morning and welcome to the 36th International Churchill Conference. I'm David Freeman. Once again, for the fourth year in a row, it is my privilege and honor to serve as your program chairman. And I promise you, as I've done in the last 3 years, we will be rigidly adhering to our timetable. All right. First thing to do is I want to discuss some housekeeping. This year we have a silent auction. The auction table is just outside to your left, right alongside the registration table. And we have 6 items up for auction, including a signed lithograph by Edwina Sands, who is here with us today. There is donated by Mark Kurtz, the Churchill book collector, a copy of Churchill's 1941 address to Congress, which was given on December 26th, the day after Christmas. We have a bespoke pen donated as well. And then there are 3 tours that you can bid on that would be private tours. One is for the Churchill War Rooms in London, the Churchill Archive Center in Cambridge, and Chartwell. So that's their silent auction. Mark Kurtz, the Churchill book collector, is set up down the hall in the Logan Room, and he's brought a number of items, some rare books, but most interestingly, photographs, press photographs that are magnificently presented, and some of them are unique images that you will not have seen before. Next to that room in the Thomas Room is the bookshop. Politics and Prose has set up in there, and they will have copies of books for sale by most of the authors who are speaking today. They will be open until 5 o'clock. We have, once again, a book signing session scheduled for this afternoon after the final speaker of the day. The book signing session will take place from 4:15 to 5:15. Not all of the authors will necessarily be at the book signing. Some of them won't be here until this evening or possibly tomorrow. But if you buy their books, for example, Admiral Stavridis will not be here until this evening, but he has a book available. You might be able to get that signed.
No, I like to do that myself.
All right. Before I go on any further, I'd like to introduce, we have a special video presentation, which we are queued up.
I may have to.
John Olson.
Because
John, we're ready for the video.
Put it in here.
He's getting our first speaker of the day mic'd up. While they're doing that, I'll just point out that later on during the day, I'll have announcements about lunch and dinner.
Welcome to Washington, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy this fabulous conference, meeting old friends, making new friends, and enjoying your trips to Mount Vernon and to the Hillwood Estate. It was at Christmas in 1941 that Winston stayed with President Roosevelt, and he was a guest of the White House. He stayed rather longer than Mrs. Roosevelt thought he would, but I'm sure he was always a welcome guest. Sir Winston always enjoyed his trips to Washington and to America, where certainly his mother was from, and he felt a great affinity with America.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, now I'd like to introduce the Executive Director of the International Churchill Society, Mr. Lee Pollock.
Thank you, David, and I join David and everyone, and welcome you to our 36th International Churchill Conference. It is great to see so many familiar faces and also some new ones from across the country, Canada, the United Kingdom, and a couple of other countries as well. Thank you all for being here, and a special personal thanks from me for the Chartwell Award, which I received last night. I was genuinely surprised, and I'm very appreciative of that recognition. I want to extend a special nod also to Marriott Hotels and the team here at the Georgetown Marriott for making this conference enjoyable, and I think about as stress-free as a conference can be. And David and I also want to thank our wonderful colleagues, Justin Reish and Aaron Minnaw, who've done so much work in the planning and preparation for this conference. And last but not least, our sponsors, without whose support we wouldn't be able to be here today. They're listed in your program and on the signage, and we're very appreciative of their efforts. Last night's opening reception at Anderson House was a wonderful way to kick off the conference. It is one of the most beautiful and historic buildings in Washington, and in addition to seeing how the 1% lived in their day, I think you all enjoyed learning about Winston Churchill's association with the fascinating Society of the Cincinnati. We have an exciting program over the next 2 days, which David will tell you a bit more about. But to begin, I'd like to share with you some highlights of some things that ICS has been doing since our last conference in Colonial Williamsburg last year. We moved our headquarters to Washington 3 years ago in conjunction with the opening of the National Churchill Library and Center at George Washington University. For decades before that time, we had dreamed of having a permanent home in our nation's capital. It is the place where, for good or bad, history is made every day and celebrated every day. The creation of the NCLC in partnership with GW was a realization of that dream and was made possible through a multi-million-dollar investment on our part and a fair amount of toil and sweat on everyone's part. We skipped the blood and tears, but it was still an endeavor. ICS and the NCLC have used this platform to create a robust series of programs which bring prominent speakers on many aspects of Churchill's life and times and his relevance to contemporary affairs here in Washington. Just in the last few months, for example, we've welcomed acclaimed historian Julian Jackson speaking about Churchill and de Gaulle, David Rohl just a few weeks ago on the relationship between Churchill and George Marshall, and Tim Bouverie, who spoke to us about Churchill, Chamberlain, and appeasement. Tim's new book on that subject has been widely acclaimed both in the UK and here and is well worth reading. I want to now make a special announcement about a new educational initiative that we've just undertaken. Those of you who have been associated with ICS for a long time will remember the admonition of Mary Soames, Churchill's daughter and our longtime patron, which was, keep the record accurate and the memory green. I think keeping the record accurate is something we've done well and will continue to do through our award-winning website, the articles in our quarterly journal, Finest Hour, which David edits so well, our Churchill Bulletin monthly newsletter, and in recording presentations at conferences like this. Keeping the memory green is perhaps more challenging. Many of us have been attending these conferences for a number of years, as I have. I find these days when I look in the mirror, the best I can hope for is that I've aged gracefully, but aged nonetheless. So our mission of preserving Winston Churchill's life and legacy depends on engaging with new generations. We've made progress on that in both the UK and the US, as exemplified by the recent Young Churchillians gathering in London, which you'll hear more about later. It's also important that we interest young scholars in studying Churchill's life and provide them with tangible support to do that. So I'm very pleased this morning to announce the inauguration of the National Churchill Library and Center Graduate Research Fellowships. This program has been funded by a very generous gift from one of our most stalwart supporters and will provide grants for travel and research of up to $7,500 each for students in fields such as history, political science, international relations, and related areas. These grants will enable the recipients to travel to special collections and archives around the world to support their research And the program is going to be focused in particular on projects that emphasize the relevance of Winston Churchill's life and legacy to contemporary affairs. When we inaugurated this program, we received many interesting applications and are pleased to have just awarded the first 4 of these fellowships. I'll tell you very quickly who they are. Anna Dove, who's a master's student in political management and global politics at George Washington University. Anna will be doing research on the implications of Churchill's concept of alliances for U.S. policy in the Middle East. William Mayer, who's a graduate student at Hawaii Pacific University, is writing a master's thesis on how Churchill was inspired by historic figures after previously writing an undergraduate capstone on Churchill's wartime leadership. The third student is Frank Fazio, who is a master's degree student in his second year at GWU. He's doing research on Churchill's concept of Britain's role in Europe, which is certainly a timely subject these days. And last, Joe Oliver, who's a PhD student at the University of Exeter, who'll be writing about Churchill's years as leader of the opposition and his post-retirement life from 1955 to 1965. All these students will be here at various times during the conference as well as at dinner tonight, so please make an effort to say hello to them. It goes without saying that this is one of the most important initiatives that we've inaugurated, and if you know any other students who will be interested in this program next year, please let us know. As always, ICS continues to pursue collaboration with other organizations who share our interest in Winston Churchill and his legacy. Having the beautiful space at the NCLC has been a wonderful asset as we do that. In the past year, we've forged partnerships with organizations such as the United States Capitol Historical Society, the English-Speaking Union, and a wonderful group here in Washington called Young Professionals in Foreign Policy. Since Churchill was a longtime supporter of the ESU and as well as its chairman, we're especially pleased that we'll be welcoming delegates from the ESU's own conference at the NCLC this weekend. And in a particular interest is a new partnership we've just created in the UK with RUSI, which is the Royal United Services Institute. It is the oldest think tank in the world focused on international security and defense issues, founded in, I believe, in 1823 by none other than the first Duke of Wellington. We've inaugurated a series of ICS RUSI lectures starting in London in the coming year, and we hope to expand that relationship to events here in the United States. For any nonprofit organization, fundraising is a daily exercise. Our membership dues, which I'm happy to say for you we haven't raised in a number of years, cover a relatively small portion of our expenses, which is why we need and want your support, whether it's through our annual Heritage Fund, other donations, or even bequests. All of you who know our chairman, Lawrence Geller, recognize that he would chastise me if I failed to remind you of that. I'm also pleased to say that these efforts are being recognized, most recently by a $300,000 pledge we received from a new donor a few months ago. We're very grateful for his support, and we invite all of you to support our cause, whether it's $3, $300,000, or anything in between. Or even anything more, I hasten to add, but that's another matter. Also, please put June 17th next year on your calendar, as we'll be holding a Gala Churchill Leadership Award and fundraising dinner in New York City. Our special guest and award recipient will be Lord Hague of Richmond, who is one of the most distinguished statesmen in recent British history, and also, like Winston Churchill, a very fine historian. That will be a don't-miss event, more details to follow early in the year, and we hope you'll be able to join us for that. David?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, as almost all of you know, I am the Director of Publications for the International Churchill Society, which means I am the editor of what you all know to be the greatest magazine in the world. if you're not getting this magazine, then you're not actually a member of the International Churchill Society, and you need to rectify that today by going, and you can give memberships, of course, to students or for only $25 a year. So this goes out quarterly, but I have to tell you that this quarter's magazine has been delayed because myself and Justin, my assistant editor, obviously have been very busy putting together the conference, and so as soon as we get back from this conference, we will get started on the fall issue of Finest Hour, which will be on the theme Churchill's Cold War. This, of course, is the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, and we'll be hearing a little bit about that today at lunchtime when one of our special guests, Edwina Sands, presents a video. To let you know what the plan is for next year with Finest Hour, each issue has a theme, and the themes for 2020 will be in the first quarter, Churchill and Blenheim. Blenheim Palace, of course, where Churchill was born and where we had our conference 4 years ago in 2015. The second quarter will be Churchill's prime ministers, specifically looking at those prime ministers, British prime ministers, under whom Churchill served himself. And then in the summer of next year, we will have an issue on Churchill's Scotland. A lot of material there. And in the fall of next year, Churchill's literary world, talking about various authors other than Winston Churchill with whom he was well acquainted. So that is the plan for next year. In addition to that, of course, we have our monthly newsletter, the Churchill Bulletin, which is free. Did I mention it's free? All you have to do is go to our website, www.winstonchurchill.org, and sign up, and you'll get an email notice about that once a month. But you can always look at all of the back issues. They're all archived on the website, as are all the issues of Finest Hour as well. The Churchill Bulletin now goes out to almost 50,000 readers a month. And when I took over, I think the number was 20,000, so I'm rather pleased about that. In addition to that, we also have a YouTube channel, and this year, everything that's going on today and tomorrow is being broadcast live on our YouTube channel, and archived there are also presentations from the last several years, including one in which you'll see me with a mustache. But in addition to that, of course, we have local chapters around the country. We are planning to open a new one in Arizona, as well as expanding our presence in Texas, building on Alan Packwood's upcoming visit. Alan cannot be with us today, but he will be here tomorrow. Alan is, of course, the director of the Churchill Archive Center in Cambridge. And as part of our commitment to our local chapters, we're establishing a fund that will help pay for travel for speakers and other expenses to tour North America and whatever other chapters we have abroad. This is the International Churchill Society. Looking to the future is a very important part of our mission, and so we have just initiated a new program of meetings for what we call Young Churchillians. And the very first meeting took place just a few weeks ago in London, and we've got a video for that to show you right now.
As a young man, Sir Winston was considered a man in a hurry. His father, Lord Randolph, died in his 40s, and Sir Winston therefore also believed that he was going to die very young, so he believed he had to go about things very quickly. By the time he was 25, he graduated from Sandhurst. He'd been under fire on 3 continents. He'd been in the last cavalry charge in the British Army with the 21st Lancers. He was a champion polo player and scored 2 of the 3 goals in the British Regimental Polo Tournament in India. He was a war hero after he'd been captured by the Boers in South Africa and escaped after a short time as a prisoner of war. He had written 2 books about his experiences and made a small fortune on the lecture circuit in the US promoting his books. By the time he was 26, He'd written 2 more books, and he'd been elected to Parliament. These are the types of achievements that we should all be motivated by. Having attended previous International Churchill Society events and conferences here in London, I'd always looked around the room and never seen anybody who was a similar age to myself. Whether this is for a lack of association, unaffordable pricing, or a disconnect with the millennial generation, it certainly wasn't for a lack of interest, and therefore I thought it was worth going about introducing a younger platform to the ICS. With the support of our chairman, Lawrence Geller, Catherine Katz, the US chairman of the Young Churchillians, and I started investigating the possibilities to set up a new grouping. Lucky to work with such a fantastic co-chair in Catherine Katz, who's currently studying at Harvard Law School and has just finished her first book on Sarah Churchill. She really has the energy and ambition to make it succeed on the other side of the pond in America.
I'm so proud of my son, George Reppard. He, this year, has just entertained 220 young Churchillians in London.
The idea behind the Young Churchillians is to not only create a fantastic platform for young people to come together and network, but also to do greater good for society, to raise funds for bursaries, scholarships, and also school speech-making competitions, which I really believe in. The inaugural event was everything we could have hoped for and more, raising £4,000 for charity, hosting 225 young Churchillians, and being hosted at a fabulous event in Boisdale, Canary Wharf. We had a fantastic evening, which is one to remember. Harry Holt, the former head of the SAS and the current head of people at Rolls-Royce, spoke about what it takes to set big objectives and to go about achieving them. And Randolph Churchill talks about the young Winston, about the adventurous life that he ran. The event was very fortunate to have some really serious sponsorships as well. So both the people committing time and financial support to the Young Churchillians. It showed that there was great scope for future events. The Young Churchillians are a group of professionals with a shared interest in history, politics, current affairs and business that are interested in joining the members of the Churchill family to celebrate Sir Winston's extraordinary life and contribution to modern civilization and relevance today. The ambition is to inspire and motivate the next generation of leaders.
We, as members of the Churchill family, are so pleased that the Young Churchillians has been set up because it will be the next generation of Churchillians following in all of your footsteps.
As I've grown up and approached my mid-20s and started working life, I've realised what a privilege it is to be the great-great-grandson of such a special person.